Hey guys, this is Caleb with DSLR Video Shooter. Today I want to take a break from what we usually do on the episode end of things and focus on some more concept stuff. And a question I get asked a ton is, should I buy, should I rent, what should I really think about owning when it comes to gear? And this is an interesting question because really only over the last 5 to 10 years have we seen this huge shift in cost of equipment from you can only rent it or you could only use it if you were working with a huge budget, whereas now for almost nothing you can go out and pick up an SLR of some type and be able to shoot fairly high quality video with it. So now what's happening is everybody and their brother and their uncle are buying cameras and lenses and all kinds of gear out there, and prices really come down. So owning and renting and considering these things is now really relevant to everyone. So I want to cover three things today. The first is opportunity cost. This is a great concept, and it's not complicated, and I think everyone should really try to understand this and apply it to their situation. And it's just the simple concept of everything you buy has an alternative cost. And then secondly, we're going to talk about buying and renting. When should you really consider renting, or is it good to own certain things? And we'll talk about that, as well as selling gear. When is it a good time to sell? Why should you sell? And we'll get into some of that. So first I want to talk about opportunity cost. Opportunity cost, like I said earlier, is simply whatever you're considering buying, or anything for that matter, has a cost. Let's say you have $50 and you're going to go buy a video game. For all my gamers out there, that's $50 that you don't have to take a trip. That's $50 you don't have to buy groceries. That's $50 you don't have to take an online course. It's really easy to not take into account opportunity costs, and a lot of time we just think, I have the money, so I'm going to spend it, or I'm going to save it. But there's all these other costs, these opportunity costs. So there's things you could be doing with that money. And so that's something that's really important to take into account and be thinking about when you're buying gear. So let's take a 5D for example. Let's say you want to buy a 5D. That isn't just going to cost you $2,000. That is 2 lenses that you can't buy now. That's a computer that you could have bought, or that's 2 mortgage payments that you could have covered. So as you're buying things, always be considering what's the opportunity cost, or the trade-off. That's another term that's used. There's a trade-off to everything. So another example is something that's a lot of people are getting into are these camera jibs. They're the 4-foot ones, the whatever length. You can get them for almost nothing. You can get them shipped in from India and the whole 9 yards. And let's say you have $600 and you're like, yeah, let's go for it. Well, not only is that going to cost you $600, but because you own that now, you've lost physical space. Like you got to store that thing somewhere. So now that's something that it's going to cost you. That's an opportunity cost. You now no longer will have that space. Also, time to set up. Now you're not going to have as much time to spend on set preparing and shooting whatever it is you're going to be shooting. You're going to be setting up this thing and balancing it. And of course, travel expenses. So now you no longer have that money in your pocket for whatever else, because you're spending more money moving this thing around. All these things, usually we don't take that stuff into account. We just think, oh well, I have $600 and I want a jib, so I'm going to buy one. It's another example of really consider before you purchase something, what am I not getting through this? What am I losing? And all this taking that money and what could it be used for that would be more efficient. And that brings us to the second point I really want to talk about, buying versus renting. And it's really difficult for people who are getting started and maybe haven't shot or only have done 1 or 2 paid gigs and are slowly figuring out what it is they end up shooting most. But if you've done a few shoots and you feel that you're kind of leaning toward one specific niche, whether it be music videos or documenting interviews or more commercial stuff, try to maybe even start like a little journal of what you're using on each of those projects. So gear-wise, what do you find that you could not live without? And like as an example, if you're shooting maybe a lot of like street interview stuff, and you find a monopod camera and a zoom lens, a 24-70 is all you're using, or at least you could not live without that. That's something you're going to want to invest in and buy. And renting is going to be expensive because you use it a lot. So that would be an area where you would want to buy. You would not want to go out and buy a whole set of primes when you're really not using them. And again, the opportunity cost, that's whatever, 2 to 10 grand, depending on what set you got of primes. That's money that's burning on a shelf somewhere holding a bunch of primes. So that would be something you might want to rent. Let's say you get a project and you really feel that a certain set of primes would be very valuable. That's where going out, renting, or borrowing would be a much better solution to buying. And a lot of the times we end up buying junk that we realize we actually really didn't need, and that brings us to selling. And everyone gets the bug, and this whole industry is, there's this almost like everyone, before they can start shooting, they need camera, multiple lenses, they need a slider, a jib, a whatever, glide cam, all this junk. And really consider what you're not using and get rid of it. There's nothing wrong with realizing that you're not using something and realizing that there's an opportunity cost and it's just sitting there on a shelf. An example that I have is I bought this beautiful Red Rock Micro shoulder rig. It was, it's a beast. It's beautiful. It's incredibly durable, awesome piece of gear. But I wasn't using it, and I ended up using different things like a monopod or smaller handheld. And I was not using that thing, and it really wasn't fitting my style of what I shoot. So I ended up selling it, and that's great. Get that thing out of there. So my kind of rule of thumb that I've been applying in the last year is if I haven't used it in 6 months, then I'm going to sell it. And now that may be different for a few people. If you are, let's say you have 2 huge projects that you use this one thing and it saves you thousands and thousands of dollars, yeah, maybe you don't want to get rid of that. But think about the little things, little microphones, junk that's lying around, and sell that stuff. Jump on eBay, Craigslist, move it, and now that opportunity cost is turned into cash, and you can use that to invest in things that you will use. So definitely don't be afraid to sell that stuff. And I've found that there's nothing more efficient, for me at least, than a monopod, set of sticks, and a body and a lens. And you can do a lot of damage with that. So I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you found this interesting, or if you found this really boring. Would you like to see more stuff like this? I'd love to hear in your shooting style what you've found to be valuable in thinking about this. So I'd definitely love to hear more feedback in what you guys have found to work for you, whether it be buying, renting, what you have figured out you really don't need, and moving that. So you can find more content on DSLRvideoshooter.com, and I really look forward to talking to you guys over on the site.